Ready to begin our next session. It's called The Sneak Preview, Blood on Two Shades of Green, East Pakistan, 1971. History Revisited by Ikram, Sehgal and Bettina Robotka. May I invite our moderator, Ms. Huma Baqai, to please come on stage. Sorry, Ms. Huma Baqai is an Associate Dean and Associate Professor of Social Sciences and Liberal Arts at IBA, Karachi. Her teaching and research experience spans a period of over 20 years, and she has, to her credit, 40-plus publications. She's also a visiting faculty at the National Institute of Management, Karachi, and Command and Staff College, Quetta. May I request Ms. Baqai to please call her participants on stage.
I feel both honored and a huge sense of pleasure doing this because both the authors are very good friends. I owe a lot of who I am today to both of them. Bettina was my PhD supervisor, so the research that I do now was first initiated in so many ways by her, and Ikram Sehgal, of course, is a friend, and we go back a long way. So Ikram Sehgal and Dr. Bettina, please. You want me to come in the center? No. I think it's you between two women, so it works. So, without much ado, we're going to take at this. This is the book we will talk about. This is the manuscript that I hurriedly went through last night on my flight from Sakkar to here. And yes, I've tried to jot some points down, but I will request the authors to sort of do justice to it and give you the deep insights and the peak preview so that when we launch this, hopefully by December, somewhere around 16 December, which is the date, you're able to sort of know what you're getting into or what you're buying. Blood over different shades of green. The title also sounds a bit borrowed because that is also, there's another book by the same name, slightly different, which was written. But when you read the book, it turns out to be very, very different. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if you look at the theme of this literature festival, it says the focus is tomorrow, reflecting on the past. The book actually personifies just that. It reflects on what happens and is narrated in a way where you can actually sort of join the dots and think that, have we moved forward? Have we learned from history? Or are we making the same mistakes all over again? It's both well-researched, it's well-written, and the good thing is that it's easy, it's very simple text. It's actually knitted together like a story, and it allows you to relive what happened, and at the same time it handles very, very complex issues with the ease of somebody who really knows how to write. So I must congratulate both the authors on doing that. And when I say complex issues, it's looking at civil-military relations in an objective manner, in a matter-of-fact way, and somehow it is also reflective of what is happening today. It is how we keep talking about political solutions and we keep sort of depending on military options. It talks about how military options like Operation Shams and Operation Searchlight gives you the victory you think you've achieved, and in the end the paybacks are extremely high. So like I said, the issues are sensitive, they're complex, they're critical, but they're handled in a way where it tells you a lot. So I don't think it's history revisited. When I read it, I thought it is history inked and dots joined. That's how I sort of look at it. And now I'm going to perhaps ask Ikram Sehgal Saab to speak about it. A lot of you perhaps know that he lived through it. He was a prisoner of war. He served in East Pakistan. And in some way, what he's going to say today is going to be living history, and he's recorded it in the book. Ikram Sehgal Saab, over to you.
Thank you, Huma, and thank you for the introduction. When I wrote my earlier book, Escape from Oblivion, I really was double-minded about writing this subsequent book on 1971 for many reasons. One of which was, am I willing to rake up a controversy again after so many years? And then I realized something, that 50 years down the line, when December 16, 2021 comes, at that point of time, a lot of misinformation will be let loose by those who do not like us, or I would say in cruder terms, are our enemies. And at that point of time, one has to be out there with credible stuff which really one not only has lived through, but would stand the investigative, let us cynosure of people that it is the truth and nothing but the truth. I will first of all say, because Bettina became a friend, and from the friendship, we used to talk to each other about many issues away from 71, but then I asked her, because she was in the South Asia department of Humboldt University, and she knows South Asia very well, in fact understands the languages, understands the cultures, understands the religions, etc. So I thought that she would be the right person who would give an objective, this thing would really, if I were to stray one side or the other, would come and say, okay, fine, this is where this is correct and this is not correct.
So, Ikram Sehgal sir, for the interest of those who are here, I'd also like to tell you that Ikram Sehgal Saab, although served in Pakistan military, his mother was Bengali and his father was Punjabi. And that actually complicated his relationship with both West Pakistan and the military. So would you make a comment on that?
Yes, of course, because my sister and I, when we went to then East Pakistan, we became Punjabis. And when we came to West Pakistan, we became Bengalis. So, but the important thing to note was that there was always two types of food on the table. One was the West Pakistan. My father could eat white rice, and he could never eat the lentils cooked with this thing, with liquid lentil.
Dal chawal nahi khate the.
Kha sakte the, wo pulao, and when my mother couldn't do that opposite. So, and she would have fish. So we had to have both sides, and my sister, of course, enjoyed both the worlds at our leisure. But the important thing was that relationship lasted till one died and then the other died. And that really was incongruous to me, that if this relationship could last with such love and affection, what happened that the bigger relationship came about did not last, right? So, and I must tell you that my father raised the East Bengal Regiment in 1949, the 2nd Battalion, and he was from the Punjab Regiment, and he did not want to go there, but because my mother was Bengali, his wife was Bengali, they said, no, you go and raise this regiment. So he took a company of a battalion of the Punjab Regiment to make this new battalion, and he, of course, got it signed from everybody that after 2 years I'm coming back. He never really came back, because the fun of the honor of raising a new battalion was such. And with the result that he really became a father of the battalion, and he was, and I'll later on tell you how much he was loved and respected in the battalion.
Right. We would like to bring Dr. Bettina into the discussion. So you're a professor of South Asia, you're a historian. In this book, the underpinnings are about Pakistan's struggle with ideology, identity, and of course the politics of national language. Did all of that play a role in what we suffered in 71?
All of that, of course, did play a role. But my angle towards the whole story, apart from the personal history of Ikram Sehgal and his family, was, of course, that in Pakistan, history as such is more about stories than about history. You know, history in the West is based on documents, on written documents, on oral documents, an interview or something, and on material documentation like the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or something like that. So we try to make history or a narrative based on the documents. And I have been teaching actually history in Pakistan for 4 years in IBA, Pakistan history. Yeah, it's funny that they are now flying in Goris to teach our history. But we had a lot of fun, and I learned in the process that the idea of history is here entirely different, or it is missed. So my intention with the book was to revisit history based on the narrative of a person who is part of that history and who has seen it and who is recording it. Recording the history of those who have been part of it is a very important thing. And of course, you also need a certain distance. You can't write the history of East Pakistan next morning after it was lost. So you need a certain distance for the emotions to come down, and for the brain to click in and see what actually has happened.
So Bettina, just another question, because you said something very interesting. She said it's interesting that you brought in a Gori to teach history, precisely because we want an objective view there. We also brought in a Gori to write history. So have you brought that objectivity and that research component to this book?
You see, no history is entirely objective, because all history writing or telling or formulating is going through the mind of the historian. And each historian has already, when he starts researching or thinking about a certain historical event, he has already set notions in his mind. And through the filter of those set notions, he will perceive the historical event. So therefore, even my history is not entirely objective, because I'm a human being and I do have my notions, and I was looking at...
Did I share that notion? Share that notion, the notion in this particular book. Because this is a sneak preview, you have to tell us something.
Well, the notion is that, of course, for me, history is... For that, maybe I have to give you another background also. I'm an East German. No? And you can imagine what kind of notions I have. And what you learned in your youth, you never forget altogether. No? So for that, of course, for me, history has a certain Marxist angle, I would say that. And I can stand by that also. But of course, it has also my teaching history has been not only South Asian history, but it has a general historical point of view also. And what I tried in this book also is to put the East or the East-West Pakistan story into the general history of the world in a way, no? And that, I hope, makes it also comparable with other histories, and which makes it also a little bit more objective and not only local or regional for this region. Also because
I think there's a huge vacuum on issues like perhaps the fall of Dhaka, because we are so scared to revisit it and really look at it objectively. And I wonder if the emotions have really cooled down or not. And that is why perhaps Ikram Sehgal Sahab right at the beginning said, I didn't want to rake up a conspiracy again. But whether we want to rake up a conspiracy again or not, if we are doing a revisit, so when you look back and you look at the issue of refugee repatriation or the military leadership eventually coming to the conclusion that they should look at a political settlement and trying it, when we look back, was everything too little, too late, and complete disconnect with the ground reality?
I think that probably sums it up in a big way. Everything that we did, and we were doing too little, too late. You know, starting with the language issue, we eventually said yes, equated Bengali with the Urdu language. If you have 56% of the people speaking Bengali and 44% speaking Urdu, it's incongruous that you say the Urdu should be the national language at that time. Later on, this was corrected, but it could have been done before it became an issue. And then, of course, once it became an issue, people exploited it. Similarly, you know, there was discrimination of various kinds, which was not generally known in West Pakistan. It was done. It was. I will not single out any one particular people who were doing it. I think it was just a natural this thing. There were a difference of you know, even the physique was different. The people from the west were taller, fairer. The people from the east were smaller, darker, and there was sort of also a little bit of a lot of look down upon this thing. So, and actually we lived through it. My sister and I lived through it on a, let us say, almost a daily basis, and it was incongruous to us why this was happening. But when it actually push came to shove, and you know, things came to such an extent where we started killing each other, then really we had realized that, like you said, everything was too little, too late. Even the concessions given, that thing, etc., maybe on the 6 points. The 6 points, when you look at it, you know, they were very much negotiable, and they were negotiated. But the point is that by the time the people agreed to those points, you know, the other side was not ready to give in. So then again came the army action. You know, that is a controversy which I've been again and again blamed for. But you know, I was not an infantry officer at the beginning of the war. I was a helicopter pilot. And what I saw from 1st March to 12th March, there was no way the army could have survived without having taken an action, unless there was a political settlement, which of course was the right thing to do. But by this time, the other side, the extreme portion on the other side, had taken the thing away, and they were now looking for bigger gains, like you know, from a confederation. They were talking about total secession. They were talking about a different flag, etc., etc. And the army on its side was, while keeping this thing, was not operating in good faith. It was building up its capacity to retaliate. So I think everything was heading towards a confrontation that did happen. I think it could have been avoided. A better settlement could have been done.
You said the confrontation could have been avoided, but didn't we sort of celebrate a victory when we did Operation Searchlight? We thought we had everything under control, and we did win that battle. So what went wrong?
Militarily speaking, Searchlight was a brilliant success, militarily speaking. politically speaking, it was the biggest disaster, right? So you have military side, you had a success. You reimposed the rule of the central government on a province that was really in total rebellion, right? Politically, in imposing that rule, you create so much of bloodshed that when I said so much of bloodshed, there is no way the bloodshed was in the amount that it is claimed now by different factors, because we've researched that very well and we know exactly what happened, and we've not done it from one place, we've done it from many ways. But there was enough bloodshed for embellishment of that to make sure that then the divide was there. After that, there was no way that you could come. It was just a matter of time.
There was no going back.
There was no going back. It was a matter of time. And when they had the chance, I think even then, when Sheikh Mujib was in custody here in West Pakistan, and there were moves to get this thing. Even then, there was a hard fraction which said, we've had a military success, and since we've had the military success, why not get a political? Very much, if you look at it, it's like the Indian thing at the moment in Kashmir, that they think imposed it, and they think military success will political. But what they have really done is taken things out of the Pandora's box, and this is not going to end here. So
I hope India learns from that. Yeah. Bettina, I would want both Ikram Sehgal Sahab and Dr. Bettina to respond on it or comment on it. You see, we have a love-hate relationship with the United States. And one of the foreign policy constructs at that time was the same thing. Which camp are we in? India was with Soviet Union, had done that defense pact that gave India the edge. We were with the United States. Nixon was supposed to be a big friend of Pakistan. And then the whole equation of when US chooses not to walk its talk, and how the US president, the most powerful man in the world, is hostage to what the Congress does the next day. And are we seeing a repetition of that?
Yes, I do. And one of the bigger lessons is that you can't force a solution which is not given by the ground realities. That was not possible in East Pakistan, and it will not be possible in Kashmir. No? Because even if you militarily you can put them down, how long can you do that? And if you
Bettina, you just said Kashmir. Do you see a parallel? You just said a military solution did not work in East Pakistan. A military solution will not work in Kashmir. Do you see parallels?
Yes, there are some parallels, no? Because Indians also think that they can force it, which is not possible, as the way I understand it. And I'm afraid we will see that. No? We will see another bloodbath.
And do you see I will ask Ikram Sehgal to comment on it, but do you see a parallel in the US role? Right now, US is supporting India in some ways?
You see, I think the US, again, in East Pakistan at that time, it was Pakistan, or West Pakistan for that matter, not understanding the ground realities. The US, Pakistan was on the side of the US, but US was not on the side of Pakistan. And Nixon's personal preference or soft corner, let's call it not preference, but soft corner for Pakistan was not in the administration, in the Congress, no? So, and he could not make his policy against the Congress like it is today also, no? So in that sense there is a parallel, but I think today we have learned in that sense a little bit.
Okay, now Ikram Sehgal Sahab is smiling away, so I'd want him to make a comment.
I just want to bring some statistics into it. There are today 800,000 Indian troops in Kashmir. And there are 8 million people. At that point of time, there were about 80 million people East Pakistan, and the fighting troops were about 35 to 40,000. So there's a world of difference. Then you are separated by 1,000 miles of hostile territory. The logistics was not there, etc. So there is a lot of difference in that sense. And you had, etc. And the type of insurrection that has taken place over Kashmir over the last few years was not present in East Pakistan. The violence in East Pakistan, first of all, let us take the period between 1st March and 25th March. The violence was contained against pockets of West Pakistanis or Biharis by the large mobs and all, which was a lot of killing did take place, and it was because they were, people were isolated at places, and vengeful mobs went at them. But there were no insurrections as such. There were no armed insurgency. The armed insurgency really started after 25th of March. Here, you've got an existing armed insurgency for many years happening. People have been brutalized, etc. So they've conditioned to that. There's a difference there. But I think the major difference which one has is that, when we're talking United States, I don't think United States really per se wanted East Pakistan to separate from West Pakistan. What they really did was more autonomy, and that was for a reason also. Because if you remember, people do not remember this, the 1962 India-China war took place mostly in the vicinity of East Pakistan, where Indians suffered a major debacle, right? Their entire core was completely wiped out, or surrendered, or absolutely abandoned their vehicles and ran away. In fact, almost 15,000 of them left their weapons and came and took refuge in East Pakistan. A lot of people do not know that. So at that point of time, I think the Americans equipped 4 Indian divisions, mountain divisions, so that they could take on the Chinese. And I think to some extent they did feel that, if you would have more balance, if East Pakistan had more autonomy, and that you wouldn't have the same problem. But I don't think per se they had really thought out a policy of separation.
There were 2 reasons why I sort of wanted you to comment on it. One, of course, is the oppression in Kashmir, which continues, and you're absolutely right that it's gone on for so long. The other is that we know that Senator Kennedy, when he visited East Pakistan, and then later on, he was the architect of anti-Pakistan narrative in the West. And post that, instead of coming up with a counter narrative, what we did was that we blocked the media out. That is why is that what's happening in Kashmir? Imran Khan put in a narrative there, and India has blocked the media out. And that's on a lighter note, and then I'll ask you more serious questions.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question. One of the major problems there happened. In fact, I'm just going to digress a little bit. My commanding officer later in the war, Brigadier Taj S.J. Anbar, he also he led the actual assault to restore the order in Dhaka city. As he was G1 intelligence, he was given command of 32 Punjab, and he led that university and all he secured in East Pakistan Rifles. But he recently died only about 2 weeks ago at the age of 90. Later on he came to West Pakistan. So, I have also talked to him at length about this thing. The major problem was that the ISPR loaded all the foreign journalists onto an aircraft and sent them off to Bangkok or to West Pakistan. Those people now became anti-Pakistan because they were removed. They came back into India and West Bengal.
And this was India's narrative.
And then they gave the Indian narrative, right? Now, if they had stayed in East Pakistan and been taken to these places where there were a lot of killings took place of Biharis and West Pakistanis and then etc., the narrative would have been more objective. But now you had the entire media.
Exactly.
You talked about Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy was orchestrated to some of the refugee camps, right? He was told there, he was told something else, he was told something else. He was told all of them are Hindus, whereas it was not true. Only about maybe about 20-25% Hindus, 75% were people who were living on the border who escaped the fighting, and came across, right? So when the Pakistan Army was clearing the border areas, they escaped the fighting. Now Senator Kennedy was taking, look, this is the atrocity is considered on the Hindus, and this Senator Kennedy, of course, saw these camps, etc., the West and the media following him. Obviously, if you have a...
But you lived through those times. Did we ever try to counter that? Have we even tried to counter it today, now?
Unfortunately, since I also happen by quirk of fate to be a journalist, a columnist rather, not a journalist, columnist, and I see that I don't think I have seen the print media, and the electronic media. I totally, the thing, 90% of them live on disinformation and lies, etc. But in print media is better, more credible here. But the amount of news that comes out is so much, that subverted, or lies, information is fed in, and the perception is fed, that you really do not know the thing between the lies and truth. We sometimes, when I write something, I used to write for two major newspapers. By the way, both the newspapers, I'm not going to name them, are the biggest apostles of truth in this country. They stand up and go to BBC, here, freedom of the press. When I used to write articles for them, they would not print it. They would not print it because they said, we don't agree with this. Right. So, where was the freedom of the press?
Where is the freedom of the press? Okay, but this is just one very important, and I think this is probably the most contentious part of this past that we have. Because you talked about more autonomy and you said probably United States did not look at Bangladesh, which is the term coined by Mujibur Rahman, but it looked for more autonomy. There are some versions in history which say that Mujibur Rahman was actually for more autonomy, even though he was not allowed to become the head of the state as per the vote. So this, how much of it are we responsible? How much of it is West Pakistan responsible? And I know President Musharraf went to East Pakistan, did a formal apology. An apology they accept then and then want more apologies. But have we actually done this catharsis of what happened inside West Pakistan that led to the fall of Dhaka? Bettina, I would want you to comment first and then perhaps Ikram Sehgal.
Well, this is one of the purposes of this book, that we have so far not learned the lessons. And going back to 71, East Pakistan was lost not only militarily or politically, it was lost on the propaganda front also. Yes. It was a defeat on the propaganda front, because the generals who were sitting there and not allowing any information to come even to West Pakistan, what is going on in East Pakistan, they thought they can suppress the truth. But at the end of the day, this is not possible. So therefore, it was not possible at that time, and of course it is even less possible today when we have all those gadgets and internets and social media. So therefore, on the propaganda front, even today, we need to think about that actually it doesn't pay to lie. Because at the end, the truth will prevail. It will come out and it will hit back at us.
Ikram Sehgal sahab, your comment. Where did we go? Yes, all of this happened. But what was happening on the political front? We usually blame the military for the mess that led to the fall of Dhaka. But there is a political dimension to it. There is a political half-truth attached to this.
I think I can best answer this by telling people something that I don't think a lot of people know. Mr. J. Rahim, who was the Secretary General of the People's Party, was my grand-uncle from my mother's side. He was my maternal grandmother's first cousin. And my wife and I, after our marriage, we went, and he was the Minister for Presidential Affairs here in this thing. And we came and stayed at his house, and he used to insist, he was a socialist but more of an aristocrat, but he would insist that we have dinner with him. He said, they're doing dinner, but you got dinner with us. And he used to talk about this. So I asked him a question, and I said, why do you think, why did you, you people took a stance, and why did you take the stance, and why couldn't you have stepped in politically and all that? And he said something which was shocking to me. And he said, if the army had not been beaten in East Pakistan, do you think we could have ever ruled Pakistan? He said, the army had to be beaten, humiliated, before we could rule that thing. Now this is the Secretary General of the Pakistan's People's Party, and I used to love him as my granduncle, but he did say this, right? So this is something that you understand the psyche, that the political side, that they were playing the game, but they never wanted, they said that either the condition laid down by the PPP with the Awami League was not acceptable to the Awami League. They said they even agreed to a joint government at one time, but they demanded, PPP demanded the defense, the finance, the foreign affairs, etc. So they the Awami League told them, says, what are you leaving us, who are supposed to be the party that has won the elections, right? So I think there was this feeling at that level that we have to be dominant, and because of that, and the army, obviously Zulfikar Bhutto had very good relationship with some of the generals, but that same thing did not exist. So the Awami League was always suspicious of them, right? So it was the suspicion of the Awami Leagues of the PPP, and it is the bad faith of some of the PPP leaders towards the army.
How much truth is there in this fact that when Mujibur Rahman was informed of this, he actually said that I never wanted it? Again, this is going to come in the book. I was a helicopter pilot at that time, and my father had been very close before he had a heart attack and left the army with General Yahya. And at that point of time, I was called to Eastern Command when it was expected on when 1st March, the assemblies were postponed. So it was expected that Mujibur Rahman would announce Bangladesh on 7th of March, in which we were having a big, huge meeting. So I was, and a lot of people do not know that, again, which is the thing that Colonel Usmani at that time, Colonel M.A.G. Usmani, who was the Bangladesh, who was known as the father of East Bengal, was my godfather. Right. So I was called to Eastern Command to take a call from the CNC at that time and the President. And he told me, and I had a photographic memory, and he told me, he says, please convey this to Sheikh Mujib, that we are ready to discuss everything, but if he announces Bangladesh, I will do everything in my power to make sure that I will break him. So, But was Mujib's life protected by the US?
No.
Were we supposed to give a guarantee that we will not hurt him?
No, I don't think.
Or hang him or something?
No, I think the army took a very conscious decision. Again, knew Colonel Zaide Khan very well, the leader of the SSG who went in to seize on Dhanmandi Road number 32 when they seized his house. They had very clear instructions.
Speak in the mic.
Very clear instructions. The instructions was, you must take him alive. You must take him alive. He is not to be touched. He is not to be harmed. In fact, one of these Havaldars or Subedars who slapped him at that time was taken to task. Okay, why have you touched him? They were very clear about that. But during the barricades that they accounted, obviously there was firing to clear the barricades. This was, till they reached that, till Mujib was taken alive, there was no killing. The killing started when the actual operation went in, because they did not launch the actual operation till Mujib was in their hands. Once Mujib was in their hands, then the actual
and that
operation.
is Operation Searchlight.
That is Operation Searchlight. So Operation Searchlight started earlier with the capture of Mujib, and that was the signal to launch the...
So I'm going to take one more question from the panelists, and then we'll open it for a Q&A. You know, our relationship with Bangladesh post the fall has also been very difficult. Although Pakistan invited them to the OIC, they declined and then they chose to come. Pakistan also recognized them in the United Nations. Did it start on the wrong foot, where they demanded a lot from us? Will they ever forgive us, this whole apology drama? Or, because today, even today, what happened in the United Nations yesterday, the comment by Bangladesh was anti-Pakistan. This continues to be the situation, although I think Pakistan did try to mend fences.
Certainly, Pakistan did try, and I think that today it depends on the government, on the Bangladesh government, and their version of history. And they insist on their version of history because if they would allow a critical view, it would turn out that they in person and their ancestors, maybe fathers, mothers, no? Already after such a long time, did as many killings as the best Pakistanis. So therefore, it is for them a survival to stick to their interpretation. I'm not sure about the Bangladeshi people on the ground. I can't actually imagine, and I don't know from my own experience, because I haven't gone to Bangladesh, I mean. If the people are so stuck in that narrative of the ruling party, as it seems, no? So if we look at this part of history, of Pakistan history, from this almost 50 years distance, it was a horrible thing, but Bangladesh and Pakistan can survive, and they are surviving even on friendly terms. No? With a different government, we have had good times also with Bangladesh. And there is a learning process in Bangladesh also. They felt very much close to India, no? Because they helped them to get independence. But when they learned what was the back idea in the Indian mind, no? They got quite a distance from India. Today they have a lot of problems with the water. With the
and the latest
border,
action in Assam?
Border problems with Assam, yeah. So there are so many problems. So there is a change, a learning process there also. So I would think that this comment is in the first place of the sitting government, not
the people.
Yeah.
Ikram Sehgal sir, a comment. Have you visited Bangladesh after the fall?
Many times. My sister, I have only one sister I told you about. She was married to, in fact, Mr. Abdul Salam Khan's son, which is president of the Pakistan Democratic Party, who also was maternal uncle to Sheikh Mujib. She died in 1977, and she was younger to me by 2.5 years. So after that, when I visited, and unfortunately for some time, my father's battalion, 2nd East Bengal, the officers of the 2nd Battalion, they started ruling Bangladesh one after the other. First was Ziaur Rahman, who was officiating CEO when I was there, and his adjutant, then General Shad, and Shafiullah was also chief. So a number of people were there who were this thing. I then started lecturing in the National Defense University, and I'd like to mention here that in 2008, the East Bengal Regiment, they gave me my father's photograph, who had commanded them in 1958, signed by all the officers. They gave me his photograph signed, which I have with me, right? And I also went and saw how they kept his name alive. So it's very incongruous. He was a Punjabi through and through, And for him to leave in 1965 or 4, and then his photograph to be given to me, his son, in 2008. Right. But I want to mention here something which was very personal. I accompanied Mia Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister. He was going, and I accompanied him to Dhaka once, and there was this cricket match going on between which Pakistan and Bangladesh, a Pride Nation tournament. And on a Friday, and he was very despondent. Sartai Saab called me and said, "Come here." He said, "What?" He said, "The embassy has said that he can't go to the cricket match because there will be a lot of slogans against Pakistan." So I'm like, "Who has told you this?" So he said, "You embassy can diye." Member sir, chalo, chalte hain. So we went and said our Friday prayers, and after that we informed Hasina Wajid that we are coming, and he said, "The old stadium." So when he walked up the stadium, the old stadium had, it was a very, this thing you had to go around before you got to the VIP stands. And the girls thing was first. And then they turned round, they had crescent star on their cheeks. And Nawaz Sharif just stood there stunned for some time.
Because that's the kind of love the people have.
And the moment he walked out, because there was no covered stand, he walked out into the VIP stand, Hasina Wajid greeted him. There were cheers, Pakistan Zindabad, all throughout the stadium. I'm just giving you something which is the thing. Today, you can do whatever they feel like. They ban all flags to be taken into the cricket stadiums. Why? Because Pakistan flags are taken in. It is true. There is hatred being fostered by the Indians as far as the intellectuals are concerned. There is this thing, etc. But that feeling that is pervasive even among our media, that the Bangladeshi haters, is not true. That is absolutely false. Because, they have much more problems with India. And I tell you, I'm not a great fan of General Ziaul Haq. I went to Bangladesh once, and General Shah said they are giving us G3 rifles at exorbitant cost. So I came back, and General Saeed Qadir was the defense production minister. I told him, I said, "Sir, why don't you give them at the cost?" So he said, "Why?" I said, "Sir, every time this rifle fires, it's got a hint at Indian, not a Pakistani. So you one less Indian to contend with." So he said, "Hold on." He said it was Friday, during those times, Friday was a holiday. He went off on his car, came back an hour later. He said 10,000 rifles free of cost. And he said not only 10,000 rifles, we'll give them PT boats, we'll give them aircraft, whatever is mothballed from us, we'll send over to them. He sent a lot of ammunition. If you remember, General Shah, when he came here as General Ziaul Haq's death was properly, this thing said. What I'm just saying is that there are within this thing, you'll never be able to take that feeling away. You can do what you feel like. You can do as much propaganda as you feel like.
We have to open the Q&A session. Indira Gandhi said that two-nation theory is dead. I think the two-nation theory is more alive today than ever before, especially with what they're doing in Assam, and that is a fallout of what happened in 71. We're going to open the session for Q&A. Is somebody handling that? Okay? The gentleman here.
Sir,
Keep
thank
it
you.
short
Yeah.
and to the point.
I've been a big fan reading your articles for a number of years now. We know of some of the resentment in Gilgit-Baltistan of being associated with Kashmir, and the population being disenfranchised, and even in interior Sindh there have been movements now in Waziristan and armed sporadic in Balochistan. So is the state learning some lessons in terms of how to deal with disenfranchised minorities which are not Punjabi?
There are parallels, but not on the scale that was in East Pakistan. This is a totally different ball game, right? Number one. Number two, I just want to add here that incongruous as it may seem, after I escaped from there, fought the war all over again in 1971, I was in Balochistan in 1973, and I was leading the Helibone company in Balochistan, because for some reason the army thought that he's been a helicopter pilot, so let him be a heliborne infantry commander. Because they were right also, because we did not know the all-up weight. So what happened was some Iranian Chinooks were sent in, and because of heat, when they tried to lift, the weight was too much, they packed up. So they said, okay, send him as the heliborne commander. So I've been there in Balochistan in the thick of the fighting. My battalion, in fact, suffered the maximum casualties, 44 Punjab Force Sindh, fighting the Maris, and we inflicted the maximum casualties. So we were in the thick of the fighting. Very strangely enough, let me tell you that we took a lot of prisoners. And I would ask them this question over and over again, why are you fighting? They did not know. They said, just to say, Sardar ne bola hai. Sardar ne bola hai. I mean, I'm telling you this, the thing. We did something with them which we don't do. We used to say, we said, gave them weapon to them. He says, you guard your own people. We want your word that you will not run away. None of them ran away. There were hundreds of them. They used to guard themselves. They didn't run away once they gave their word. That was a different ball game. Today, it is totally different. Today you have you have had a discrimination. You have got external factors. Things that it's totally different.
Take more questions. I see a couple of hands. The gentleman at the back.
Yes.
Would you like to introduce yourself also?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
I heard some of your conversation, but not all of it really. What I'm going to ask you is that there is a pertinent question, intellectual circles here in Pakistan or outside of Pakistan, where I live actually, that Pakistan history is basically a revisionist history. It's a history which has no basis actually. And you talked about two-nation theory. Can anybody in the right frame of mind explain what the hell two-nation theory is? I mean, there are more Muslims in India, there are more Muslims in Bangladesh, which was part of Pakistan. So how two-nation theory still stands when a part of Pakistan, which actually majority of Pakistan...
Thank you, sir. Would you like to respond?
Look, I think I'm one of the people who suffered the most. Mother being Bengali, father being Punjabi. Pakistan was the finest experiment in nationhood of its time. You can take away and name it Bangladesh, you can name it whatever you feel like. The fact remains, it is a Muslim country and it will remain a Muslim country. And you can do what you feel like. India can do what it feels like. Why is Bangladesh having 7 infantry divisions and one, hold on, just if you learn, one...
This is not a dialogue, please.
Other things, etc. But if you take that thing, the two-nation theory, etc., it was relevant then, it's relevant now. Today, more than ever.
Next question, please. Yes, the lady right in the
Am I
yes,
allowed
please,
to?
Bettina.
I think this is a very valid question. Because, as you said, there are so many Muslims outside Pakistan, which doesn't take away any grace from Pakistan. We are happy that we have Pakistan. No? Latest 2002, Gujarat, we know why we have Pakistan and why it is good to have Pakistan. But you see, it's also okay to have Bangladesh now. It was painful at that time. But I think we made up our mind and we can accept, and we have accepted Bangladesh. So I think revisiting the idea of nation and nation state is a very prone question at this point, where we have a globalizing world, where the nation state, with all those notions of sovereignty, that I only decide about my country, nobody else. We can't. Sovereignty is vanishing because the problems are regional and they are global now, and we cannot decide from our point of view because we have to take into our mind the interests of our neighbors and of our larger regions.
Yes, please.
Yeah, two quick questions. So given how subjective, or that in history is subjective, how objective can it possibly be at the end of the day? And also, did your parents ever discuss any of the issues in front of you guys, or how did they explain anything to you if you and your sister ever asked any questions?
Choose not
Thank
to.
you.
Go ahead first.
About I said about history will never be 100% objective, because then you have to take out your person. Nobody can do that, according to my understanding, no? Because it goes through your mind. But it can be objective in the sense that you don't only think about your ideas, but you take into account the ideas and the interests of those people you are talking about, and of the neighboring and regional things. So that is the ground realities in the region. And that becomes more important as the pace of globalization is proceeding. Thank you.
I told you that my sister was married in East Pakistan. And of course, when she died in 1977, this is the first time I visited Bangladesh after that, and I had the painful duty of taking my parents there. In 1971, when I went around both in March 71 and later on in November 71, when I escaped from prison and I was back prisoner of war camp, and we were 32 officers and 1,000 other ranks in Indian prisoner of war camp. My relations there would not permit me to come to their homes. And it was very painful, even though my sister was there and she was that thing, etc. So I came away with a very bitter feeling. In 1977, when I went there after my sister died, it was totally opposite. I mean, they really went out of the way to say how bad they felt that, you could not come to the house. Let me tell you that this discussion took place many times, right? And my father always agreed that they had done the wrong thing. My mother always said that the political leadership in Bangladesh should have, East Pakistan should have been more objective and accommodating, right? So I think that discussion went in. My mother is buried here with my father in Abdullah Shah Ghazi Mazar outside. And when she died, I want to ask you this question. When my father died, in 1983, General Shah was the president, and we had property in my mother's name in East Pakistan, which was taken over by abandoned property. And my General Shah rang me up and said, Amma, here, if she is Bengali, I'll give her a Bangladeshi passport, and she can take over the property, then we'll sell the property, she can tear up the passport, go back. She flatly refused. She said, whatever I have is standing in front of me, that is me, and or is in the graveyard here, and I will not go back. This is my country.
Okay, one last question. Then you're running out of time. Buy the book, read it.
My question to Ikram Sehgal Saab, according to history, when Quaid-e-Azam was addressing in Baqai University, when he said that Urdu shall be the national language of Pakistan, and according to history that there was a pin silent in the hall of that university. Do you not think that Quaid-e-Azam was also not understood that the repercussions of the using Urdu language over Bengalis, as a result later on, linguistic issue become a national crisis for Pakistan?
You see, Quaid-e-Azam was, I think Quaid-e-Azam was misled by the then leaders of East Pakistan. The Nawab family were the political leaders. The Muslim League was made in the Nawab family house in 1906 or 1905. And they were the prominent leaders, the Nawabs of Dhaka, and they were the things, etc. They were Urdu speaking. They were Urdu speaking Bengalis, right? And they misled the Quaid-e-Azam, saying that people of this thing would let it. I was shocked afterwards, when we were doing the research by this thing, but I think that was a major thing which he was misled by the leaders of Muslim League who were Urdu speaking at that time, Urdu speaking Bengalis. And please understand, when they still tried, the Sheikh Mujib was a Muslim League activist. When they still tried to go away, the first thing he made was not Awami League. He made Awami Muslim League. Awami Muslim League. And then when he changed it 2-3 years later to Awami League, a lot of the leaders of then Awami Muslim League left that Awami League and rejoined Muslim League because so there was this misleading of the Qaid at a very critical point in history.
Dr. Bettina, last comment.
One sentence only. We have been fighting during the writing of this book, obviously. Quaid-e-Azam was one of the points where we have been fighting. And I think a more down-to-earth and factual view of Quaid-e-Azam would be good for Pakistan.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We've run out of time. This is the book. It's coming out in December. I don't think it's 3D, but it's re-inked. Thank you so much.